Hello, Marky Dragon, also known as Marcus Eikenberry in real life. And today we have some special stuff going on. Today we are doing a roundtable, and we have CCP's Fozzie joining us. Hello, Mr. Fozzie. How are you?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Yeah. What nice offices are you out at HQ out there?
Yep, this is our my desk here at our office in Reykjavik. I actually just I've been in the office all afternoon doing interviews for our commentators for the next Alliance tournament. So headed straight up from there, and really looking forward to this.
Yeah. So it looks so clean there. Are you guys sure you get any work done?
Yeah, that's mostly an illusion. Don't worry.
Um, yeah. So okay. Well, cool. Now, do you end up working on Saturdays often?
It's not too uncommon. We basically, a lot of us just enjoy the results of the work so much that we like to put in a bit of extra time. Today, it's just been a case of coming in to do the tournament commentating stuff. Tournament stuff often sort of has to fall amongst the other times outside of work hours because we have to get all of our normal work done too.
I would think that would be part of work, but you know.
Yeah, the tournament is we've got a couple people who are in like full time working on it. We've got Oliver Nicholson or CCP Loxy, who is our video producer and in charge of all the production of the tournament, and then we have CCP Bro, who's in charge of our esports, and they both work on it much like during work hours more. But me and CCP Soundwave and CCP Dolan, we all basically volunteer our time for it.
Cool. So, Fozzie, for those who've never met you before, can you tell us what you do there at CCP?
Okay, I'm a game designer here at CCP working on EVE Online. I've been here for just under a year. I joined last June. I'm working on Team 5.0 for the Odyssey expansion. I was on Team Game of Thrones before that. So I do a lot of ship balancing and module balancing as well as other features for Odyssey. My main focus was on resource work. So a lot of the stuff that we've done for rebalancing resources, Tech 2, manufacturing materials, ice, or all that fun stuff.
Okay, cool. So, as you can see here, we've got people joining us here in the Google Hangout. It is a public hangout, and I did post the link. And, chat wants to know if you speak Icelandic. After being there only a year, probably not,
Yes.
huh?
No, I don't. I would love to learn Icelandic at some point, but I know like just basically how to understand when someone is asking if I want a bag with my groceries.
Yeah, paper or plastic. So, okay, well, we have several people here, and of course, we want to talk about Odyssey and you know what's coming up, and you know just generally be all excited about it. And we have we have I've been on this 30-day challenge, and I feel like I've scraped maybe 10% of what is Eve, even with all these hours I've been playing. But you know what? I guess taking a new player perspective, what is it about Odyssey that should excite a new player?
I think the big thing that's going to be exciting new players for Odyssey is the fact that we're taking this exploration content that's a lot of it's always been there. We're also updating it in a lot of ways, but we're taking it and making it more visible. A lot of people come into the game looking to do some kind of exploration. They see a game that's a gigantic universe, open to do lots of things in. It's a big sandbox world, but the actual content of how would you go about exploring in the game has always been a bit tricky. It's always been hidden behind a lot of different barriers. So one of the big things we're trying to do is take that content and make it something that you can actually see that it's there and people can actually recognize it. We're leaving breadcrumbs basically for people to find new and interesting experiences, and then giving them the ability to go and run out and check out all that cool stuff.
Cool. So I know that I'm completely overwhelmed by the game. But
It's not an uncommon experience.
yeah, but making it work. So now we have several people who've joined us here. Do any of you have burning questions you'd like to get in? Everybody is silent.
Don't be shy, guys. Come on, Brian. I know you had a question. Yeah, but my question is not really leading to Odyssey. So my question is a different point
Well,
because
go
we
ahead.
figured out. Okay, we figured out our core got a mail or a petition against a
Mhm.
post that is based in LowSec, and someday cosmic site were detected at our post site. We didn't figure that out before. We didn't got any error message that there is a cosmic site close to your pause, and now we need to remove the pause due that cosmic site. Why is such a thing happening? For example, I mean,
I'm really not sure. What do you mean by cosmic sight?
yeah, yeah, and it's like an anomaly that's there permanently. It's you have a beacon in the
Okay.
space, and
Yep.
then you can warp to that cosmic site. And this
Yep.
cosmic site is 250k off our pause, and now we need to remove the pause. And in one ticket before, we got the information that we don't need to move the pause because this is an unknown issue. And yeah, now we're screwed a bit, I must say.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, customer service. That's a whole different division. I can't really speak to petitions. That's actually something that
Mm.
like it would be like if a GM was speaking to my job. I wouldn't appreciate it. So it's their discretion. They have the full
Yeah.
our full
No,
trust for those.
No, yeah, but my question is, in this case, will those kind of issues be fixed in the future or not?
So this is a static site that appeared after you set up the POS. It got moved
Yes.
there, or
Yes.
okay, that is very very odd. I was never aware that that is something that's happened. Let me like after we're done here, let me know the actual name of the system, and I'll go and take a look and see if that's something that we can actually. I'll talk to our content guys.
Okay.
And see if I can figure out why that site is there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, so other guys here, what's on your mind? Oh, somebody is talking, but their mic is not on. It's Alex.
Are you guys?
There you go.
Sorry, that's my fault.
Yeah.
I forgot. I muted it 2 places. So are you guys finally done nerfing the Drake?
That sounds like a complaint.
You've only
Let
nerfed
me answer that
like
with
6 times.
I'll say is that I don't foresee any major changes to the Drake on the horizon, but you never know. The Drake is still, I think it's a very effective ship. It actually does more DPS than it did or than it did before the most recent changes in Odyssey 1.1. But I think we're pretty happy with where it is right now.
So does the Navy Drake kind of bring back some of what was taken away from the Drake before?
For people that like to use the Drake as that kind of basically the high tank long range brick, so people that were there basically just for the tank and spank, it's not going to be amazing. The Navy Drake's not going to necessarily be worth the cost for them. The people who are the Navy Drake are going to be really happy about, or the people who are going to be really happy about the Navy Drake are the people that use the Drake in the kind of podler role. So they put a couple nanos into it, use it as that kind of heavy tackler and skirmisher. That is the role that got taken away a little bit from the Drake in 1.1, and the Navy Drake does it exceptionally well.
Okay.
So as a newer player, a lot of that went straight over my head. But what I want to ask here is it seems to me that Eve is like this giant sandbox, and with it being a sandbox, it is in many ways player created content. Now, how does the players or the world interaction come into play to have you modify something like this ship? Why does that happen? Is that the way people are playing it? Is that by request? How does that work?
So the main goal that we're looking for when we're doing these rebalancing of ships is to try to give people interesting choices to make. And so in cases where there's one obvious choice that everyone goes with that one ship. That's not a very interesting choice. And if there's a case where a ship is so terrible that once you actually learn enough about it, you won't use it, that's also taking away choices. So the big goal we've been making with the Tiericide, this whole initiative of rebalancing the ships in a gigantic sweep, is that we want to make sure that when it comes to choosing your ships and choosing your setups, you have lots of interesting choices to make, and that your ability to make those choices and fit them with whatever your current situation is and whatever the people around you are doing is what's going to help you stand out from the pack. When it comes to, so I guess like that's the big goal for the actual ship balancing as a whole. When it comes to actually how we go about doing it and how we find out what we need to do, a lot of that does come from the players. We've got a ton of very knowledgeable players. Like you said, this game is a gigantic sandbox, and there's no one person on Earth that understands everything about Eve. There's people that have expertise in different areas, and we really rely actually on our experts in the community and to provide us with what their opinions are. Then we can look at what we see as well in our statistics and our metrics and come up with what we actually think needs to be done. But it's definitely a very iterative process with participation with the community.
With as expansive as the game is and its 10-year history, I'm sure there's a lot of features and a lot of code in the game that people are like, oh shit, look what I found. And nobody even remembered why it was there, or that that was even a function, or why is it not being called anymore, or
very, very much so. There's a lot of some of the old stuff, and we are as we go forward, as we add new features, as we refurbish features, we're also taking the time to refurbish some of the stuff behind the scenes. In our most recent expansion for Odyssey in Retribution, and the one before that, Inferno, we did a actual year-long project to revamp what's called Crime Watch, which is the system that manages criminal aggression. So when you steal from someone, it's the system that lets that person know they can shoot you without the police getting in the way. If someone suicide gangs, it's the system that gets the police on them. It's that covers all those things. And it was one of those systems that basically behind the scenes was a mess. No one really understood why certain choices were made with the coding way back in 2002, 2001. So the whole thing basically got torn out and then rebuilt behind the scenes first, and then the actual player-facing layer got rebuilt too. So we're going to keep doing that as we go forward. One small example of something kind of one of those weird things that just showed up from the depths of time. There's a actual piece of code in the game that tells you that if any ship ever loses more than half of its structure in one hit, it blows up the ship. That was never documented anywhere. And in fact, there's never no one even knows why that was ever put into place. It was just the case, and there's an actual piece of code that all it does is check for that. So we just took that out for Odyssey. So that's going to be gone in Odyssey. It isn't something that people actually run into very often, but it's one of those cases where we decided that wasn't making the game more intuitive. It was making the game less intuitive.
I can totally see that being in there, and guy going, hacker, he one-shot me.
Yep.
And because you're blowing up, because they shouldn't have enough power to take you down below, say, 40% or whatever. And they hit that,
yep.
and it blows you up, and then of course they go to customer service to complain. They'll be like, no, the game shouldn't do that. How do you deal with all of that? With the game is so complex that. And like you said yourself, that there's so many portions of it that are just unknown or known only to certain people. But how do you communicate that all together and keep that straight? Or is it just this, that there's this fog that is out so far after your knowledge?
Yeah, it's a very difficult process. Like I said before, one of the biggest things we can rely upon is having players that are willing to help us with the process. That's been hugely important. We're also making a big effort to document things better internally than we have in the past. Both new features are now documented very well, and also as we're going through and finding out new things about old features, we're making sure to document that as well. So there's a lot of stuff that's kind of the legacy of some practices not being ideal in the past that we're slowly repairing as we go forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know how that is. So, okay, let's see here. Christopher, did you have any questions here? I'm just going to start going through
No,
people.
I'm just in Odyssey. In Odyssey, are you going to do anything for, I guess, say new players as far as and bring them in? Because I've been playing for about 30 days with Marky as well, and I'm really enjoying the game, but I'm finding out that it's real difficult.
Yep.
But it's doable. I just think some people get real frustrated really quick because they don't give it enough of a chance, or they don't go through the tutorials or something.
Unfortunately, it's very hard work.
Yeah,
to get started.
It's a lot. You spend 8 hours just to try to figure things out. Is there something that y'all are going to do eventually, maybe to shorten that expansion to help new players a little bit more, or it's just it's just whatever it is for Eve?
It's definitely, that's something we keep in mind in every expansion. Just recently in the Inferno, one of the Inferno point releases, less than a year ago, we revamped the whole tutorial process, so it's a lot better than it used to be. In Odyssey, we're doing a couple things. One is, like I already mentioned, we're taking this exploration content that was previously hidden behind a lot of barriers that a lot of new players wouldn't even find out about, and we're completely making it much more accessible. We're making it much more visible, so that as much as possible, we try to make it so that people don't have to rely on tutorials. But if they do want a tutorial, we've also completely revamped the exploration tutorial as well. But then besides just that feature, we've also been making changes to the feedback that the game provides you, trying to, as much as possible, build the game in a way so that when you take an action, the reaction that comes from that is something that is communicated to you. So it's not you take an action and you're dead and you don't know why. As much as possible, we want to give people indications of exactly what's happening. And we did this in Odyssey in one way through the probe scanning interface, which is now built up in a way. It used to just be numbers that would tick and you wouldn't necessarily see exactly what happened. Now, if an action you make with your probes makes your sensor strength for that target go higher or lower, it actually visually connects it. You see a bar that moves down or up based on the actual actions that you're doing, and basically makes that a lot clearer. And then also doing things like building up our new transitions, the transitions on jumps between systems, on death, so that instead of just when you get potted, you appear in the station and you might not realize exactly what happened. I've had people, and I've actually had the experience of warping in to a station in a pod, and then somebody shoots me right as I arrive on grid, but before I dock, and I can't tell if I docked or if I got potted, and then that put me into the station, because visually there was no difference.
Right.
So one of the things that's been changed is that now when you die, you'll actually see that you died, and it won't just be a disorienting appearance in the station.
That's pretty cool. And I had one more question about the, I know it's probably advanced for me, but the time duration when it slows it down and you're doing, okay, now when you're warping, is that going to be the new warp thing, is that going to be slowed down as well, or is that going to just be a loading screen?
If you're doing the actual jumping between systems, I don't
Correct.
believe that gets slowed down. The warps inside of the system do get slowed down, but the actual jumps from system to system, I do not believe that's governed by time dilation.
And would the animation still stay the same?
I believe it does, yes.
Okay. Just, that was a random question that somebody wanted me to ask. So.
Okay. Curtis, you got anything on your mind?
Yeah, actually, you guys can hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, sweet. Actually, to what you just said about, like, it's a disorienting thing where you can't tell if you got blown up or if you got into the station safely. You just died in character. It's kind of supposed to be disorienting. That's just how I see it, but
yeah, but you should also be able to tell that you died. And so if this was the game world, you would remember the pain of the destruction or something. But if you actually don't get any difference in feedback between docking safely and dying, then that's a mistake on our part. We wanted to make sure that when you die, that's something that is in your face that you died. And so that's actually the new death animation isn't something that's comfortable and fluffy. It's you see your naked frozen corpse spinning in space slowly.
The little sign that says "You suck." Little taunt.
We actually, it shows your corpse appearing out of your pod. It shows time slowing down around you, and you actually see it's in the game world that you were destroyed in. And then if you click your button, any keyboard button or your mouse, then it brings you to the station.
Don't worry, guys. You're going to see that plenty as soon as the patch hits and I'm playing. I die so much, it's not funny. Well, it is, but, that's all I can do is laugh about
The sign of a good Eve player is dying a lot.
Oh, really? Then I am an expert.
No kidding.
So, okay. Go ahead, Curtis.
I was just going to say, is there any intent by CCP to make missile boats, more viable for PvP? Because right now, there are two reasons why they're not. First of all is that missile boats, obviously, the missiles have travel time. If a person is being targeted in a fleet of missile ships, it's like, oh, I'm being targeted by missiles. Leave. And then warp back in. And the other reason is that missiles can't crit. They can't critically hit.
Yeah, I don't think you're flying the ship properly.
Well, what I'll say is that right now missiles are in some of the strongest place in PvP that they have been in a very long time. The issue of people warping out is actually also an issue with guns, because instead of watching for the missiles to come in, what people can actually do is watch the little yellow box that when it indicates in the actual bracket when someone's targeted you. So you see the yellow boxes, and if you see some of them start to turn to red, you'd warp out. The way to solve that, of course, is to warp scramble or put a bubble around someone so they can't warp away. But you're right that the travel time is a bit of an issue. Missiles are a lot faster than they have been in the past, but that is something that basically has to be taken into account. Right now, though, heavy assault missile fleets are very, very, very powerful, as are light missiles and rockets. And the place where we're seeing missiles not be as heavily used is the battleship size. And we are actually taking steps to help fix that in Odyssey by making some very big changes to cruise missiles. So cruise missiles are getting a lot faster to reduce that travel time. They're getting their damage increased. And a lot of the platforms for them, the ships that use them, like the Typhoon and the Raven, are getting a lot more powerful and a lot faster, which is very useful for PvP.
Right. Yeah, I saw that in the patch notes. I was actually really pleased about that. Even though I don't use cruise missiles, I'm more of a laser guy myself.
Okay. Yep. Like right now, we're seeing, so like if you look into nullsec combat, the actual use of heavy assault missiles with the Tengus is very popular, as is with more skirmishy fleets using things like cheap caracals. We also see those in low sec. We're seeing legions with hams be effective as well. And for frigates, hookbills, condors, these are retributions. These are ships, or sorry, vengeances. These are ships that are very, very, very popular using missiles. Hawks as well.
Cool. Okay, on to the next. Now, I can't pronounce your name, but I'll describe you as the guy with the great shirt and the beard, with a stove in the background. Got any questions for him?
No, not really at this time. I've been thinking, so maybe I'll pop one in a little bit later.
Speak up if you do come up with something.
Yeah, of course.
Now we got Incogni here. Ink, how you doing?
Doing just fine. Not sure what I'm doing here.
Not sure?
Why am I here? I've been asking that myself for quite a while.
Ooh, that hangover's hitting him, isn't it?
He always sounds like that.
Yeah. I'm always like this.
So what's on your mind about Eve?
It's a question about planetary interaction. We barely have any skills to level up to 5. And do you plan on adding more in upcoming expansions, like reducing the amount of CPU or power used by the planetary modules?
I don't know of any plans that we've got to introduce new skills for it right now. I know there's a lot of the kind of very early discussion and brainstorming being done about ways we can make planetary interaction and Dust 514 interact with each other, but we definitely don't have any of that at a point that can be announced yet or can be promised. So don't take this as some kind of commitment that something like that will happen. Right now we're in the process of having our leadership team come up with a good plan along with all of our developers and along with our CSM for what to do for the winter and for the future. And we've already kind of indicated the grand theme of that as being space colonization. It's very possible that some changes to PI could be a part of that, but I can't say for sure until we've planned it all out.
So
Should those
something...
of us... Oh. Go ahead, Ink.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. My fault.
So something is being worked on. Can you point the mug that's the leader so we can shoot him the next time we have the opportunity? That's what I like about this game. You get mad at someone, at the developer, you can actually shoot the guy. In For example, in League of Legends, your favorite champion gets nerfed. You can't do much. Same for World of Warcraft. In EVE, I can get your corpse.
Oh, goodness. Careful there, because Ink has a corpse fetish.
I've got it. I'll say I have a very extensive corpse collection as well. I'm very proud of it. So I know where you're coming from there. I'm not going to sell out anyone though and put them on your list, but you should just collect us all. You actually get a special secret prize if you get one of each dev's corpse.
Oh, really?
But that would be amazing if you did. So we should do that.
Is it the medal that just the same about spinning your ship in the station 10,000 times?
Well, we've got the counter, but if you can hit 10,000, I'll give you a high five through the internet.
That was good.
Okay. Cool.
Oh, will there be any intent on implementing the minigame Slay into EVE so you can play it through your game client?
Very possibly. It was something that was developed for Incarnate, and they actually worked on a lot. I wasn't here at the time, but I know I've heard stories about all the time they put into it, and they're kind of proud of it. It is something that could potentially go into EVE in some way. It also could potentially go in as like a part of maybe an EVE on a tablet or phone, but that's, I can't say for sure. We still have the actual, like, the game around somewhere we can use it, but I don't know what plans are in place for it.
I mean, it's on the PS3.
Yes.
I played that like 50 times to get the beta code for Dust. You have no idea how much time I actually spent playing that stupid game. But I loved it, and I like being able to play it. But I want to be able to play it on a much more mobile system than my PS3. So I was like, oh, I'll hop on EVE. I don't have anything to do. Forget ship spinning. I'll go play Slay.
Yeah, I think that would be, like, there might be some places we can put it in the client. I would love to see us put it into EVE on smartphones and tablets as another optional game you can play, but that's something that our former executive producer of EVE Online, John Lander, is now moving over to be in charge of our mobile segment, that we're letting him build it up, and so he's working on all these really cool plans. So if you have any ideas like that or anything else that you'd like to see in EVE Mobile, on a phone or a tablet or anything like that, definitely tweet at him at ccp_unifex. He's been really interested in hearing what people have to say.
On the planetary interaction that Ink was talking about earlier, are we ever going to see anything that we can do with the militants and the dancers and all that? Is that ever going to come into play with Dust 514, or have you guys even thought about having that? I mean, right now, pretty much the only thing we use them for is LP, right?
Yep, I'd like to see some more uses for those kind of interesting things. We saw actually my favorite use of all of those livestock items in the past quite a long time was when the Amar militia in factional warfare took the system of Arzad. And this had been a long fought system. It was one of these like headquarters of their enemies that they flipped onto their side. It was a big celebration. It was a joint operation between Dust and EVE. It was a really, really impressive cooperation all around. But the way they celebrated, because they're Amarian, they jumped in a freighter full of slaves, packed to the brim with slaves, and they blew it up. And they bathed the system in the blood of slaves.
Jesus. And this is why I like Eve. Oh my god.
It is. It's one of the one of the beautiful things about it, but it's you know what? It's a train wreck because everybody's rubbernecking looking at it going, ooh, how interesting looking, but it's at the same time it's something adverse. People have an adverse reaction to has happened, so that's funny. Piwar, is it Pior?
Me.
Oh, you? Okay.
I have one question.
Okay.
Are you planning any changes to NPCs, the rats and the loot and the drops from them? Like the drones, for example, they give a little bit more money, but you have almost no chance of getting any worthwhile loot from them because they usually don't drop anything. Like when you take Serpentis or Charistus, you can get the 400 million module, which is a real boost to it. But when forced to be in drone region. You just get, yeah, I got captured a faction drone. I got a loot worth 23,000 ISK. What a good thing.
Yeah, the loot for NPCs is something that we always go back and look at once in a while. CCP Bedek, who's one of the members of my team, who's a senior content designer with us, he is focusing on a lot of that stuff. One of the things that we have been looking at a lot actually is the drone loot. We introduced the new drone officers back in Retribution, and those I think were a positive step forward, but there's a couple of issues with them, one of which is that they weren't spawning in very many systems. So actually we've made a change in Odyssey, is that we are expanding the number of systems you can find drone officers in the drone regions. So those will be a little bit more common now. Hopefully that'll be something that gets people a bit more of a fun jackpot once in a while. But we definitely still want to be looking back. The officers don't have quite as good loot as we would like them to have. The drone commanders don't have quite as good loot as we'd like them to have too. So we're looking at our options for potentially fixing that up at some point. Yeah, giving them some new interesting things to drop.
So I got a question here. Eve is one of the few games that has a very robust API connection to the game.
Robust is a funny word to use, but in our case.
Well, I mean,
it does. It's extremely effective. It recently has been going down a fair bit. We've got CCP, what is this? PrismX, that's his dev name, who's been doing a lot of great work with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, in as far as other games go, the API is probably the most options and the most opportunity with Eve as opposed to any other game I've seen. And how is that? How does that API, interaction with external sources, whether it's applications or websites or whatever, how does that benefit the community?
It allows people to make some really amazing tools that we might have never realized people wanted, that may be things that we also provide, but players can provide better. Tools like EveMon, for instance, are something that is vastly valuable to so many Eve players. And I'm not sure CCP ever would have thought to put something like that in on their own if it wasn't something that the players created. Now the players have created something that's so valuable and so useful. It's something that we definitely want to be expanding because we're working on it. Some of you may have heard of Crest. It's our new replacement for the API, essentially, that has been worked on for quite a while. It's actually being used right now for Dust. It's how Dust and Eve interact with each other. That's how powerful it is it essentially lets you link two games. Wow. We're going to be expanding that ability out to third-party developers as well, and opening up new and more ways for people to both read. But the great thing about Crest is it'll allow you to actually write to the server as well. So that's very powerful. In some ways it's dangerous, so we're going to have to take it very carefully, but it's going to allow some great options. I think our initial beta of it is going to be allowing you to read and write contacts, so you can change you can friend people, basically change your standings with them through an external application, and then we'll expand it possibly to chat, for instance, allowing people to write directly to chat channels in Eve through external clients, and then see how it goes from there.
I think that's great. That's great. Or even, there's a lot of stuff. Okay, so think of this. Think of, I'm at work. I'm not supposed to be playing Eve. The ports are blocked, but I can get to the web page where I can manage all of my contracts. Yes. And I can do my buy and sell, and I can look at all that stuff. And think of how much more playtime people are going to get in.
Yeah, expand people's skill training to that. Let them change skills. Expand people's science industry. Let them put in some new science jobs or put in a new assembly line job. Allow people to perhaps manage their corp, which is it's already basically a web-like interface in the game, just not a very good one. But allow people to access that through the web. That's something that would fit very well with that sort of use. I think there's a lot of options that we can.
I know that benefits we get. I would love to be able to research skills and everything and manage that on my phone or my tablet or something like that. That's one of the things that, when you go on vacation, you try and, boost up these skills, but you almost always have your phone with you, and maybe, your phone gives you an alert. 1 hour left. Better get something else in there, and you can just dump something else in, or start looking at what you're going to work on next.
Yep, and we've already seen, players have come up with a lot of very creative ways to get similar kind of functions themselves, get things onto phones, and do it in interesting ways. So you've already got some very powerful Eve applications for phones, like Aura for Android, and some corps and alliances have gone so far as to integrate actual SMS systems that they host on their own servers and connect that in with their alerts. So, oh, look, a tower is coming out of Reinforced. Let's send a SMS to all of our Dreadnought pilots.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Help, we're under attack.
So if we can ever connect that kind of thing, allow people to ping through Crest, that'll save them the cost of having to set up that server.
Wow. So how, I know that Dust 514 is pretty new, and I don't have a PS3 to even look at it to really know, but how does that all interact, and do you see that going further out in the future, where maybe there'll be some other games that'll interact and be a part of the EVE universe as well?
I think that's very possible that we may end up having more games, more clients, more ways of interacting with the EVE universe. I think the EVE Mobile is going to, in a lot of ways, be like an extra game that exists within the EVE universe when it comes out, even if it's just something like allowing you to change your skills and market orders and all that. But with Dust 2 as well, I think the options there are limitless. We're taking it very slowly. We want to make sure that the game both survive well on their own, that they're both effective games. We don't want one to harm the other, but we've got some very grand dreams of how we'd like to continue tying them together. Right now, they're connected through factional warfare in a very strong way, like I talked about in that case of Arzad. It was an actual joint operation between the Dust players and the EVE players, both fighting for the Amarian Empire. And then as well in the Metropolis region in Losec, Dust corporations are able to conquer and take planets for themselves, and that gives both the Dust players bonuses. It also gives bonuses to any EVE corporations that join the same alliance, or any EVE members that join the same corporation as those Dust players, so they can do things like produce capital ships faster than anyone else, but only in a system where they also control the planets, and people can fight over those planets or fight over the shipyards in space.
How about okay? So that's having to do with planets and everything. That gives me another idea, which is like is it White Wolf Studios that's working on World of Darkness?
Yep. The former White Wolf is now at CCP's Atlanta office.
Okay.
There, yep.
And so I know that they're developing this world there, but is it outside the realm of possibilities to think that maybe it could show up as one of the planets in the game, and there could be some sort of interaction?
I would find that probably a bit unlikely. The lore of the two of them would be very separate. EVE has a very has a lore that maybe isn't very favorable to having things like vampires and magic exist in it. And the lore of World of Darkness is something that's been extremely well established through all the books and role-playing games and tabletop and all that. But I think we'll probably have possibly other games that connect into World of Darkness, and possibly other games that connect into EVE on all kinds of different platforms in the future.
Would it be
talking about the PS4? Are you going to have Dust for the PS4?
I can't announce anything at this time.
Okay.
I think that was an unofficial yes. He just said that he couldn't announce it. He didn't say that it wasn't happening.
When it comes to Dust, all I can say, because I don't actually work directly on Dust, but I do talk to all the people that do. But what I can say is I can't announce anything that hasn't already been said by CCP. But what has been said by CCP is that we expect Dust to last for decades.
Okay, that's understandable.
Interesting.
So that's like, read into that whatever you want. But
Exactly.
we want Dust to be around for a very, very long time, in the same way EVE is around for a very, very long time.
And the only reason I was asking is because I didn't know if the PS3 games were going to be compatible with the PS4 yet. They really haven't got into that, so that's why I was wondering if a lot of people are going to pick up the PS4, if they're going to be having to pick up a new game. So that's why I asked that question. Okay.
Are we ever going to get, as fleet commanders, are we ever going to get bonuses from EVE back to Dust? So are there going to be skills eventually introduced so that we can help Dust players if we run a corporation that, for regular EVE players, there's not a lot of incentive for Dust players to join a standard EVE corporation except for just, to bum our ISK.
Yep, I think there's going to be a lot of potential for stuff there. What we have right now is yes, it's at the moment it's basically just organization can be shared between them, and then also bombardment on the planets. You can get space support for your battles. What we are going to be expanding and opening up as soon as we can is allowing people to transfer some money between the two games, and that we'll get that as well. But in the future, we could definitely see things like having the EVE players be able to produce guns and weapons and tanks and armor and all that for the Dust players in their orbital manufacturing facilities. We could see possibly, yes, some bonuses directly, combat bonuses between them. That's all stuff that's, though, like both well off into the future a bit, and also something that would have to be decided by our Dust team in Shanghai and the game designers there, in conjunction with us here in Reykjavik.
In the future, me and my friends have always considered, like when Dust was first announced, and everyone's just like, "Oh my gosh, are we going to be able to fly in Dust?" And it's just like with our EVE ships, and it came out and said, obviously, no, we can bombard planets. But is there a move in CCP or a vision to allow EVE players to fly in the atmosphere with, our normal ships, despite the fact that they're not aerodynamic at all, in the planet? So, like, I could be playing Dust, look up, and I could see my friend hovering just a couple hundred meters above me in his EVE ship, providing fire support, like if he was a frigate or something like that.
I don't think I wouldn't say that would be anything anytime soon, especially considering the fact that EVE ships are very obviously not designed for planetary flight. What I can say is that, as we showed at FanFest at the Dust keynote this year, there is work being done. I can't say if it's going to be like what form it'll take or when it'll come in, but designs are being made for planetary flight vehicles within Dust. But those obviously would be a very different kind of design than the EVE ships.
Okay.
Are you gonna add any more like missions? I know you have like level 1 through level 5 and epic art missions and stuff like that. And I don't know if you ever change them or do anything more since I'm new. But do y'all expand on that at all? Because I don't know that.
Yep, we do expand on them sometimes. It's not something that happens in every expansion by any means, though. So what we had is back in the depths of time. So originally there was a relatively small selection of level 1, 2, and 3 missions. Those couple expansions later, they added more of those. Then later they added level 4s as well as more 1, 2, and 3s. And then level 5s were added, more 1, 2, 3, and 4s. And then we've added incursions, which are a kind of player versus environment content for groups. Before that, we added wormholes, which don't do missions, but they're their own kind of player versus environment in a very advanced environment. And so we definitely are going to keep adding stuff around. And that's something that you're not going to see in every expansion by any means, but we do still work on, yeah. EVE is a game that, because we're somewhat unusual in being a sandbox game in a world of theme park games, not to be pejorative, but like that's just the games where the missions and that kind of content, direct content, is very core to the gameplay, while in EVE, it's player interaction that's the core, and then the missions are really the periphery. So we, for instance, have only, at this point, 2 people here in Reykjavik who work full-time on PvE, basically on NPCs, so that kind of like directly authored content, while a team like the guys that made Knights of the Old Republic or the Old Republic MMO, they would have many dozens of people doing that kind of job.
Okay, I understand.
When will players be able to build Stargates?
I can't say for sure when. It's something that we would definitely like to do someday. We talked about it at FanFest as a big kind of the direction we want to be moving EVE over the next couple of years. But it's not going to be right away by any means. It's definitely not going to be in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
Several, I think it was about 2 FanFests ago, there was a slide, one of the final slides of the main EVE keynote, was basically what CCP wanted to accomplish. On that slide was a small tag that said Jovians.
Mm-hmm.
What are your intentions with that?
So at that time, there was actually some plans for a Jovian expansion. Those plans fell through. It didn't turn out to be something that was really meeting the quality standards that they were looking for, so they decided to go a different way. I'm personally not very excited about the idea of Jovians. I think it's something that could be used as a crutch, but we have to be very careful about how we use it so that we don't end up using it as a crutch. It's very possible we may introduce them. For anyone that isn't familiar with it, the Jovians in EVE lore are another group of humans. Everyone in EVE is human, that came through that wormhole back in the day, but they didn't lose the technology the same way as everyone else. So they actually stayed quite advanced. They kept a lot of their learning and kept advancing themselves. So they're basically a hyper-advanced group of humans instead of the barbarians, the rest of us. But they do a lot of genetic engineering, so they have basically genetically engineered themselves into a bit of a corner to the point where they have a lot of disease problems, and they end up dealing with that, a lot of societal problems. That means that they've actually cut themselves off from the game, from the rest of the world, for the most part. And there's a lot of options. There's a lot of cool things that can be done by introducing them. I don't think it's something that's going to happen anytime soon, but probably someday we'll have them in.
Is there an intent to, because obviously the Jovians, the Enheduani, were the group who were supposed to take care of these sleepers while they were sleeping. And sleeper technology is supposedly very similar to Jovian technology. If you look at the Battle of whatever it was, where the Jovians beat the
it starts with an A.
Sure.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
They said like they had these massive beam technology, and that's exactly like what the sleepers have. Is there an intent to maybe? And I have two questions here. First one is there an intent to create faction rogue drones or faction sleeper ships? And then the second question is Terrans. Obviously, we're EVE wormhole galaxy, cut off from the original homeworld and the original galaxy. Is there an intent? I'm thinking far in the future to maybe connect the Terran, our original galaxy, with our new Eden home.
So with the first question, I would love to see us do more with rogue drones, introduce some more rogue drone equipment. Like I said before, we were talking about what kind of stuff we could give as loot to the rogue drone commanders and officers in addition to what they currently have. I would love to see a rogue drone ship, for instance, a whole series of rogue drone faction ships. That would be really cool. And other equipment and drones and all that fun stuff. As for the Terrans, it's very possible someday. I wouldn't say anytime soon, though, and we don't have any direct plans. We're more focused on, right now, directions other than that, but it's very possible that someday we may decide that fits best with what we want to do.
All right, I got a question on a feature that's coming up in Odyssey, which is being able to train two characters simultaneously on the same account.
Yep.
And is it really just as simple as, Plex for the account, Plex for the alternate character, and they can both train until that time expires? Or is there any other bonus with that, or,
It's very simple. It's just if you have an account that's already subscribed, whether that be through Plex or through an ongoing subscription or any other method, and then you apply a Plex to it as a special second character in training, by right-clicking on the Plex or by going through character management, that will allow you to train another character on the account for 1 month. It's not something we expect everyone to find ideal. It's definitely not as powerful as if you want to create a character that you want to train for a long time, your best bet is to make a second account. That's going to actually be better bang for your buck, because you're paying the same amount then, and you're getting to use them both at the same time.
Right.
The people who have been asking for the second character in training are people who want to train an alt for a very limited amount of time and don't want to have to then keep that account subscribed to keep having that account or that character as something they can use once in a while. Yeah. So if you want to make an account that can, say, do PI well, if you want to make an account that can give you some extra lab lines or manufacturing lines, some other stuff like that, and you want about 1 month of training, you can pay the 1 Plex and train it up and then not worry about it, and then you can just log into that character whenever you want to do those things and then log back into your main, as opposed to in the current system, the way you have to do that is create a new account, train the character up to whatever level you want, and then pay a Plex to transfer that character to your other account, which would end up paying more. So this basically just allows that subset of people to save some money.
Do you have to add the whole Plex to the other character, or can you train it for 10 days and use the rest of the Plex for your other character if you're just training some really limited thing that only takes like 5, 6, 7, 10 days, depending on what you're training for your alt. So, which would make it much more viable to buy a Plex, and if you could use just a few days for your alternative character. So I'm thinking I trained sometime up characters, but I don't see I would really buy 30 days to train a character that only needs like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days to train for. I just don't see anything. I think just to wait with the other one. Instead, I would rather buy if I could add just a little bit of the time to the alternative character and then the rest to my main account. Then I would use this. But if I cannot do that, it's just a waste of money.
At the moment, for this first iteration, we're keeping it as simple as possible. So you can only add one extra character train to account. We're not enabling 3 right away, and you also can only do it in 1-month increments for this one. There's a lot of stuff that's being thought about for how we can build up on it, but what we want to see is how people use this first one, how they react to it, and then move into this slowly and carefully. So for this first iteration, it's just as simple as 1 Plex gets you 1 month for 1 account, and that's the most you can do for that 1 account at a time. And also the least you can do for that 1 account for the time.
Okay.
Speaking of Plex, is there any intent in the economics part of CCP to maybe help bring down the price of Plex? Because people are speculating like, oh, the price of Plex will skyrocket, and if it does, well, no amount of incursioning is going to be able to keep me subscribed via Plex, because that's going to be difficult. But
the wonder of the whole idea of Plex is that we actually have a system that is based on the free market. So it rising or dropping is actually fine. We don't have a dog in this game of what price it to be set at, because it'll even out to whatever the market decides. That being said, we don't like it when it's going up too quickly or down too quickly. So that's when our economics team and our economists may take a look at it then. If it's spiking or dropping, the same way as a major world country would not want their inflation being too high or too low. But as long as it's slow and steady, that's fine, even if it keeps going up. As for the danger of it spiking, I think are people that you're talking to assuming that it's going to spike because of the second character in training? Is that the concern that they have?
yeah, that's the one I've heard the most.
I'll say that you don't really need to worry about that. We've looked at the number of people that would potentially use this. Compared to other Plex usage, it's a drop in the bucket. I don't expect Plexes to spike from this by any means. The bigger actual control over the Plex market right now, or the thing that controls a lot of the Plex market, is how much people have extra spending money to invest, because people use Plex in the same way as people in the real world use gold as a hedge against inflation. And so we see it whenever people have a lot of disposable income, they start buying up some Plex to use that as a hedge against inflation, and then we see the price increase.
I have a question. For about a half year, I have a new faction on my disliked bar, and it has quite a negative standing. I have no idea because it's called Unknown. Is that planned for the next expansion to introduce a new faction that's gonna own my ass because they dislike me for unknown reasons?
No, you don't have to worry about that.
It's a bug?
That's a bug, yes. I think that one is tied to the mercenaries in missions. So those missions you get against people that don't have a faction, against like the mercenaries, that those guys, we had to give them a faction behind the scenes when we revamped the way faction standings work, and it just ended up that displayed. It just basically shouldn't be displayed.
It was driving me paranoid for at least a few months.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that. That's, if I remember correctly, the one that showed up in people's books, in their character sheet, that was connected to the the non-faction mercenaries or that you fight sometimes in missions.
I'd like to ask about why when you're in combat or when you're just in JITA or wherever, when you run into other ships, why is there no damage?
Simply because we would have everyone just like dying in a gigantic fire from accidental bumping otherwise. It would be a lot of things. There'd be a lot of issues. Like what would happen, for instance, like for damage in high sec especially, we need to know who instigated the damage. If you have collision damage, someone could just be like autopiloting to the gate, and you could set your ship in front of them, and then they'd bump into you, and then does Concord them because they're the one that bumped into you?
Well, what about when you're in conflict with someone else? Why can't I ram the other guy?
Enabling some kind of damage like that is definitely possible, but it would have to be done in you activate a special module and then it does it for a short time kind of thing, because otherwise we wouldn't actually be able to make it a manageable game mechanic. It would definitely make more sense in the universe, but as far as the actual game design works, it wouldn't be manageable otherwise.
So you're saying that CCP has considered, from the way it sounds
Yes.
considered a suicide.
We've considered a lot of
kamikaze
fun stuff.
module.
Yes, I would love to see a Suicide Kamikaze module. I would absolutely love to see it. I have this dream of a Tech 2 battlecruiser that has a Doomsday device, but every time you use the Doomsday device, it blows you up as well. So you get to blow up a capital ship, but then you die too.
So it's a clear skies. It's a clear skies thing where you take the Tempest and you just crash it into the back of the Titan.
Basically, yes. But there's a lot of things we could do with that. I'd love, like, whether we have a special type of frigate that can do it, that would be hilarious. There's a lot of cool ideas. We would like to add every once in a while some new mechanics that are a completely different spin that's very different than normal Eve mechanics. One of the best examples of that is bombers, which are wonderful. I'd like to see and I know Soundwave is very excited about the idea of introducing some more interesting outside-the-box ways of doing combat at Eve. So someday we can see what we can do with that kind of stuff. But it definitely wouldn't be something we introduce across the board, where like every bump causes damage. Because the first thing I would say the first thing that I would do, if I was allowed to do this, if we introduce that, is that I would set a freighter right outside of the G to 4-4 undock, and everyone would die. Everything would die. I would just park there, and everyone that undocks would bounce into me, and then they'd get concorded.
But wouldn't the freighter take a little bit of damage from us bumping off of it?
Yeah, then I'd rep it. It'd be fine.
I could just imagine this being a problem, just like okay, everybody undock. Holy crap, who bumped me? Everyone dies.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit about the way of thinking of CCP and how putting things together is it high on the priorities list that when you are adding a new feature that the logic is sound, that it's something that if we had space travel and all of this stuff that we could potentially do?
As much as possible, yes. The term we use internally, that we use for it, is verisimilitude. This idea that it needs to make sense to people and not break their suspension of disbelief. That being said, we are talking about a game where essentially everyone's underwater as far as the mechanics work. So don't think about it too much. But the good news is we can get away with that as long as we make it consistent within its own world. So even if it's not consistent with the real world, as long as we've created this world that's internally consistent, it kind of works. So yes, we do definitely keep that in mind, but we can never let ourselves become complete slaves to what would happen in the real world, or else, as awesome as Kerbal Space Program
you'd all become
is,
researchers.
Yeah.
Something that makes me think about that is like Star Trek and everything, and how many of the things that from Star Trek have actually come true, or are on the verge of coming true. Especially like communicators, cell phones, stuff like that. And I'm grabbing something here, and I just wonder whether or not maybe what if Eve's around in 50 years and we're going, you remember when they introduced this? Can you believe that we're going through jump gates these days? That kind of thing.
Yeah, that would be really cool. And there's a lot of internally created lore science behind stuff, although it actually doesn't always make sense in the game, but again, as long as people don't think about it too much, it works fine. Like the fact that technically jump gates are only supposed to work between binary systems. They're supposed to rely on there being a binary star for the whole thing to work, but very few of our systems in Eve are binary. So
Yeah.
I've talked with my friends. Like I was during an incursion, I had about like 50 people like in TeamSpeak, and we were all just chatting. And I'm like, so who would win? Mara Empire versus the Galactic Empire, and then the Federation versus whoever. And the one thing we all came down to was that Eve won every time except for in one thing, and that was everyone's faster. Our warp is so primitive compared to Star Trek's, and then Star Trek is so primitive compared to hyperdrive. It just doesn't make sense that we have all this advanced technology, yet we can't figure out a way to go from...
We can jump, though. They don't have jumping for the most part. So, like, they'd be warping, and then we'd just be there when they get there. And haha!
That's true.
We just set up jump bridges and Titan bridges everywhere and hot drop them. It's fine.
So, can you tell me that, were you an Eve player before you started working for CCP?
Yes. Yeah, I started playing Eve in 2006, and I've been playing pretty consistently. I took a break for a couple months, but yeah, I've been playing a lot of Eve before I came to CCP.
Were you a miner?
I did mine, more so at the beginning than towards the end, but yeah. I did a bunch of things. So I started out early on, joined Eve University, back when Eve University had actual 00 space in Geminate with an alliance called the Big Blue back in 2006. And from there, moved on to become a dedicated mission runner. From there, I joined Red versus Blue in its initial iteration, right on the first day of Red versus Blue. And from there, moved on to being a pirate. And then from there, moved on to 00. And then I was a 00 pilot when I came to CCP.
So how'd you get, do you have to, like, if we wanted to work for CCP, do you recommend, like, a degree in computer engineering, or is there, I mean, beyond being a huge
It depends on what kind of job you're looking for. Like, we do look for programmers on a fairly regular basis, for QA people, so we've got a jobs website, ccpgames.com/jobs. Keep an eye on that. We've got a lot of, our hiring isn't all in Reykjavik, it's also in Atlanta and in Shanghai, Newcastle, England, San Francisco. So we've got offices kind of spread around. In my case, I first became basically known to CCP through the Alliance tournament. So it's this yearly PvP tournament that we do with all the alliances competing against each other, and I was a commentator for that. And when it comes down to statistical averages, your best bet to work at CCP is to become an Alliance tournament commentator, because CCP has hired like half of them.
Okay. So
There's your next goal, Marquis.
No. I'm perfectly happy in this very warm environment called Florida. So, but I will come up and visit sometime.
Yes.
Okay, let's start wrapping this up. If we got anybody who's got a burning question who has not had a chance to ask.
Yeah, I want. Have you considered more with Eve Speak to put it on an outside client, so it's not crashing or lagging with Eve and connected to the API. So.
Yep, Eve. So you're talking about Eve Voice, right?
Yeah, Eve Voice or whatever. So it's really outside the game and connected to the API and everything like that.
So just very recently, about a month ago now, we actually had a meeting with Vivox, the guys who do the actual back end of Eve Voice. Brought a lot of the issues that we're having with Eve Voice to them. They're refocusing on their games business. They had focused a bit on some other businesses for a while, but they're really focusing on games, and they really are trying to work hard to help us now. And so we've actually basically rebuilt that partnership with them to make Eve Voice better. So we're not making any change to Eve Voice and Odyssey, but you're going to start to see some good things coming out of Eve Voice in the future.
Okay. Well,
but what I was wondering is, are you going to need to be in the game to be able to be in it? Like you all kind of sit on TeamSpeak, chat to your buddies while doing something else?
Ideally, no. Ideally, we would like you to be able to use it wherever. We'd like to have out-of-game clients. We'd like to have mobile clients. We'd like eVoice to be entirely separate from the game client itself. But I can't promise that yet. But we would like that to be the case.
Okay, so
I just wanted to, we've kind of been neglecting Twitch chat, and they've been burning to have some questions answered. One I saw earlier, this guy said, my wife is wondering if we can, she wants a pink ship skin. So ship skins.
Yes, ship skins. That was another thing that was brought up at the FanFest keynote, the idea of alliances and corporations flying their colors. It's something that we definitely want to do more of. We've introduced some special ships that are the same stats as normal ones, but with special skins, and that's a system that I think can be built a lot on, doing lots of really cool things with it. As for Pink itself, we have an art director here who is a brilliant art director who's created this whole very distinct art style for EVE. And that distinct art style is very grim and gritty and Blade Runner. And I think he would probably, if I were to introduce a pink ship to the game, he would hit me on the head very hard with a baseball bat.
Okay. So let me ask you one final question before we end this. If you had unlimited resources, and what would be the one thing that you would seek to add to EVE Online?
Ooh, good question. It's so tough because I've just trained myself to think about things within the amount of resources we have. I came into this company like, hey, we should do this and this and this and this, and then
they pulled you back down.
Yeah. What would I have to pick one thing?
Well, if you had infinite resources, you could just create EVE in real life.
Yes, I would do everything. Now, infinite resources. I would. There's a couple things let's say one of the things that's a bit more realistic and short term. I'd like to change the way that social interactions, we kind of support social interactions in the game. So beyond just corporations and alliances, a lot of experienced players do most of their socializing through passworded channels, chat channels of their own. But that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily get involved with right away or realize is there. I'd like to see us really expand that to allow people to have social groups that are completely separate from their corporation, from their alliance, and intersect with other corporations and alliances and really support that a lot better. And then tying that in with things like eVoice would be great. For like grand things, I'd like to see better support for esports in EVE. I'd like to see us be able to really build up the kind of thing that we're seeing with the Alliance tournament every year, and then the kind of thing we're seeing with the Syndicate Competitive League, which is an entirely player-run tournament that is doing amazing things. They're running monthly tournaments, but at the moment they have to run that on Singularity, our test server. I would like to get us to the point where we can provide them the right kind of tools and other players the right kind of tools to be able to take this kind of great community activity that currently is existing on other servers and bring that into the TQ server, the main server, so that people are spending real ISK and it's actually connected with the economy. They're having to build their stuff and tie it in with the whole EVE ecosystem. So I'd love to see that. I'd love to see very robust support for esports done EVE's way.
Mm-hmm. That sounds awesome. So I would fail every time. I'd always be on the losing team, but Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining, especially Fozzie. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. I know it's end of day there for you, and we really appreciate having you here and giving us your insight.
Well, thanks for hosting this. It was great to be here.
So, okay, everybody, thank you very much, and take care.